Hey VC, it's me Roger back with another video. How y'all doing? It's been a few weeks. My car's still in the shop. It's killing me. What are you gonna do? Cheers, friends. Gonna do something a little different. I know classical music isn't really a big thing in VC, except for maybe like, you know, Stockhouse and weirdos like that. But Erik Satie is a big hit, and a lot of his music is really popular and popularized, particularly the Gymnopédie. And there's a record store day vinyl thing of Aldo Ciccolini playing Satie's piano music. I didn't get that. I have this 5 CD set of most but not all of his piano music recorded by Ciccolini on EMI. I'll be honest, folks, I prefer to listen to classical music, particularly like solo piano music on CD, for a number of reasons. The lack of background noise, lack of, you know, warping or off-center pressings that make it go ring, makes me nuts. CD gets rid of, you know, that is not an issue with CD. So anyway, for me, for this kind of really quiet music, CD is the thing. So sue me. So anyway, Satie. So I have this, and I have this CD of his orchestral music, done by the Orchestra de Concert Lamoureux, conducted by Yutaka Sato. Interesting that an Italian pianist and a Japanese conductor would be like kind of the interpreters of this very, very French music. I do have one piece of vinyl. Francis Poulenc playing Poulenc and Satie. Poulenc, another composer, knew Satie. And you know what? I need to clean this up and listen to it. It'd be interesting to hear Poulenc's interpretations of those very famous pieces. Now in the background, you're listening to me play. Fuck you, YouTube. You know, if I have to, I'm just going to do it myself, okay? Now, I am no concert pianist, but I love playing this stuff, even though it's very subtle and difficult to put across. And so I wanted to show some scores, because these are very cheap. This is a Dover score that, I don't know, I paid $11 for it a few years ago. It might be like $14 now. That includes, you know, just a ton of his piano music. Now, you might be thinking, well, I can't read music, and yeah, so I don't know what it's like to not be able to read music, but I think you can like follow the shapes and things, and so, you know, here's that very famous piece, the Gymnopédie, and here I'll go ahead and now, this couldn't be simpler, right? But it's very, for me anyway, maybe because I'm not French, very difficult. Technically easy, but to really put it across, very difficult. As you can hear for yourself, I feel like I'm a clod. But anyway, beautiful music. Now, the reason why I'm showing you these scores is because Satie was so interesting in that he put little bits of text in the music. Now, not so much on here, but you know, there's some interesting stuff here at the bottom here. The Gymnopédie was the Spartan dance of naked youths and men. Now, that's something that doesn't always get mentioned in the liner notes for, you know, Satie does Starbucks, you know what I mean? But anyway, elsewhere, I mean, he goes a little bit crazy, and there's these wonderful pieces There's a lot of stuff for like four-hand, the unpleasant observations for piano four hands. I wish I had a piano buddy I could play with. I thought about maybe recording the parts. But anyway, here's a great one. 3 little pieces called, I'm not going to try to say the French, but the translation is Genuine Flabby Preludes for a Dog. And so there's all these little bits of things that he writes, you know, instead of like, usually it's an Italian term like, ritardando, slow down. But instead he has little things that say, very 9 in the morning, a severe reprimand. Now, even if you can't read music, know what the pitches are or play it or whatever, I think it is great fun to follow along with a recording of stuff like this and, look at the interesting little things that he writes in there that are, they're not meant to be spoken out loud or anything like that. Here's another great one. So yeah, the end of that has this little bat at the end. There's descriptions automatique, automatic descriptions, being on a boat, being on a lantern, being on a helmet. Again, full of all kinds of very humorous little bits of text, and if you do read music, and if you can play at all, then there's a whole wealth of things to be discovered. He was one of the first composers to do away with key signatures and bar lines, and it can be challenging to. Some of this is very challenging to play. Here's desiccated embryos with all kinds of text here and all kinds of stuff going on here about mollusks. The kind of thing that, like, no liner notes are really going to really get you close to what's going on. I don't know. I think it's fascinating. $10. It was. Dover also did this really neat edition of Sports and Divertissement, which recreates his handwriting and the illustrations, which were originally in color, but what do you want for a few dollars? They're quite amusing, and again with his texts and very avant-garde for turn of the 20th century, and I love seeing his script. That's pretty cool. Now if you're really hardcore, there are French editions on Salabert that include some other pieces that are not in that collection, including this great piece. Is it in this one or the second to last thoughts? With some digs at Debussy. And Dover also published Parade in full score. This is, of limited interest, specialists. But a great piece, famous for the typewriter part. And cheap, It's fun to follow along to scores, I think. And finally, one last piece I want to bring up is Vexations. A piece for piano that the story is John Cage discovered it when he was doing research in France in his youth. And it's just one page of music. And I got this online somewhere, the International Score Archive or whatever it's called. Yeah, one page of music, but with these really interesting instructions. There's a corrected one with English translation. So yes, note from the author. To play this motive 840 times in succession. 840 times in succession, he says. It would be right to prepare oneself previously, I'd say. And in the most dead silence by earnest immobilities. John Cage mounted a performance of this, all 840 iterations. I think there were like a dozen pianists, took many hours. Very, very bizarre piece with a melody in the left hand and then this invented harmony in tritones. And if you know anything about music, the tritone is the devil's interval, the most dissonant interval, and so he's all of these harmonies are in tritone relation to each other and to the melody, and then its inversion. Anyway, fascinating, I think. All right, folks. Thanks for hanging out for a little bit. I wanted to share that with you. It's something that I think some of you, if you're out digging, I think really, this is something you might find in a used bookstore or something like that, and would give you hours of entertainment. If you're a fan of Erik Satie, highly recommend it. All right. See you soon with a vinyl update. Waiting for a record in the mail. Take care.